why does he bring up the two sons of Abraham? If you read, or if you're with me with regards to the book of Galatians, you realize Paul has continually talked about the children of Abraham. This is not the first time Paul talks about Abraham. He talks about Abraham. He uses Abraham as an example many, many times. And Paul has continually talked about the children of Abraham because to be a child of Abraham was a high privilege. And if you remember when Jesus was talking to the religious leaders back in the Gospel of John, chapter 8, Jesus is talking to these religious leaders and he says, well, who do you guys think you are? Who are you? And these religious leaders with this pride, with this arrogance responds, we are children of Abraham. It was a high thing to be considered children of Abraham. And now remember, the Galatians were pagans. They were pagans. They were not Jewish people. They had no idea the history of Abraham, the history of Genesis, Leviticus, Exodus. They were pagans. They were Greeks. That's what they were. They were Greeks. They did not know the law of God. They did not know the word of God. They were not living according to the will of God. They were living a pagan life until Paul comes and preaches the gospel. And one of the things we have trouble remembering, because Christianity has had such a incredible impact on our Western culture, we forget what it was before Christianity was preached, or before Christianity came along with its new ideas. And the reason I bring this up is because we forget just how incredibly vicious, how incredibly cruel, how incredibly lascivious the pagan world was. And I want to bring this up because I want to put it into context who Paul is talking to. The Galatians people were not Jewish people. They were pagans. And we forget what it was to live in a pagan world. So what do I mean by lascivious? One of the things that's so interesting about Christianity was one of the reasons it grew, or in the first century, one of the reasons it grew in the Greco-Roman world was the woman. The woman flocked to Christianity. It was the women who responded first to the message of the gospel. The reason women flocked into Christianity was really, it was a complete contrast to what they were accustomed to, because Christianity was the very first religion that came along and said, you should have no sex outside of marriage. And today, when you hear that phrase, it's a very restrictive phrase, right? It's a way of, supposedly, if you ask the world, it's a very restrictive thing to say to your freedom. But in the first century, when Christianity was introduced, it was absolutely liberating to women, because in that time, polygamy, which means, the man could have many wives or many women, was normal. And most of all, there was an absolute double standard when it came to sex in the pagan world. Because men can do basically whatever they want in the pagan world. Men could have sex with anyone, anywhere, anyway, anytime. And that's the context in which the Galatian people lived. And so women, especially married women, did not have that freedom. They didn't have the freedom that the men had. So there was an utter double standard. And along comes Christianity and says, one man, one woman in marriage, that is a place for sexual intimacy.